And we are going to go right into our next guest. I'm super excited. I was also on his show recently. Let's bring on Yubi. Hey,
What's going on?
not much. It's good. It's a good day, I think. And we have some good people, some good viewers participating here today, asking a lot of questions. Guys, please keep that up. Trust me, you're definitely going to have some for Yubi. He's got some great information. But let's start with who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Yubi Ciminieri, I'm the CMO of Interview IA. We are a technology company that launched last July, so right in the middle of the pandemic, on
Great
purpose.
time to start a business.
Yeah,
Super
right.
smart.
Well, it really, our team, we've been working together for the last 5 years doing this work, building the methodology behind Interview IA. And I think COVID and then, when Black Lives Matter, George Floyd's murder, and these conversations about systemic inequalities started to really, permeate, especially at work, that, it just made so much sense to us to bring in a technology that responded to both of those opportunities for organizations. So, we're full steam ahead. We're an interview platform that really what we're trying to do is solve for a lot of what you and Chris were just talking about, and how companies can more inclusively and equitably evaluate candidates based on real things, right? Based on data. And, so it's interesting listening to what you and Chris were just talking about and all the tips and things. I certainly have perspective on that. And what we've sort of forced candidates to do because of the status quo of how things are and how they've been for 100 years. So anyway, we can get into that.
But and you and I talked about that even on your show. So, I've said this on my show. I've said it, I believe, on your show. I believe the resume should be fired. It's nonsensical. No one knows how to make it properly. It's awful. And it actually creates a lot of bias, and a lot of people don't realize that. Even on the HR side, a lot of people don't realize that until you walk them through it. And I've watched people go through these exercises and watch the light go on of, oh my God, I'm declining candidates for this reason. This is so awful. Like, who have I missed? Even down to font. There are people that will skip over any resume with a certain font.
You're right. I mean, you're right. And it's, I mean, that's how our brains work. And this is where we get into a discussion about unconscious bias, because we see one simple criteria and make a decision about somebody based on that one thing. So it could be their name. It could be where they're from. It could be where they went to school. And that is, well, exactly. Yeah. Or years of experience or lack of. But in reality, do any of those types of criteria have you as an organization really truly defined that as a meaningful piece of data that indicates whether somebody's going to be successful in your role or not?
Right.
And I would argue honestly, most people don't.
Most people do not, no. And honestly, even years of experience is something that I'm trying to get a lot of my clients to move away from. I run a recruiting firm, for anybody who's watching that doesn't know, because it actually doesn't matter. And now maybe on the management side, sometimes, you want a certain number of years within an industry or for an executive, something like that. But for the most part, actual years don't matter. What you're saying is, I want an expert. Or a novice, or it's whatever level you want someone. You want somebody at that skill level is what you're communicating.
Well, yeah, what we've done is what we think we've done is define this ideal candidate. There is no ideal candidate, right? And to your point, a lot of these tech companies, for example, who want the top architect. Right. Well, the top architect for your company, that doesn't mean that the top architect is going to be 100% successful at your company. They may be a top architect at another company, but unless you've created unless you've done the work to create the environment and understand who the right type of person is going to be, you can't go out and say, I want the top person. That doesn't mean success.
No, that just and it also doesn't mean to you what it does to somebody else. Right. I mean, this person can be the top to this in your definition, but maybe not to somebody else. So what does that even mean?
Right. Exactly.
And a big company, and one thing I've had to work with a lot of my startups on is, you don't want to take somebody necessarily from a big company and place them with a startup, because they're not going to be used to that lack of autonomy. They're going to be used to having all these people to support them and do all this stuff. Whereas with a startup, often you have to do everything yourself. So it's a completely different world. We have a question. Let's see. If you have done freelance contract work with companies, how should you list that on your resume? Ooh, that's a good one. I'll let you start with that.
That is a good one. It's hard. I mean, I would just say that, I think it speaks to, the work that you've done in the field. I don't think it should be any different, than saying I worked full time for a company or as a W-2 employee.
There's different ways to list it. So you could list each contract role. You could say contract with, XYZ company, or if you have a company name like that you've created for your, under an EIN or something like that, list that as your company name, and then under it list the projects by your client's company name. That's probably the best way to do it. Would be that's how I like it done. That's my opinion of how I like it done, but that's kind of different for different companies. But those are the two suggestions of how I would do that.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's more important to demonstrate how that work really applies to what the role that you're applying for, and again, then we can go back to the conversation about should we even use a resume? I mean, unfortunately, yes, you're right. Like you still have to,
right now. Yeah,
you have to. But I guess where we come from for organization is to say, how are you using that resume? What are the lessons you're pulling out of that resume that apply to the role that this person's applying for, and that apply to, can this person do that role? I think that's where the resume needs to be used is let's look at the things that matter. Let's not, again, a lot of it doesn't. Magic number, years of experience. What is, doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter.
Absolutely. It shouldn't. No. And you're welcome, Corey. Corey says, thank you for answering his question. And then we have, hi, John from South Florida. Oh, I'm in South Florida too. Hey, what's up? What are you recommending for entry-level candidates that have been getting pushback in this remote world? I feel people want more experienced people because they are not in the office. Ooh, that's a good one.
That is
Do you have any thoughts on that one?
I mean, it's hard. I don't know. Here's what I will say before kind of answering that, and you may have a better answer, Catherine. So I'm going to come at it from the problem is organizations aren't doing the right job in terms of spelling out exactly what success means in a role, and they're not creating an interview process that really gets to the points of, one, can somebody actually do the role? So again, regardless of entry level, regardless of years of experience, can you do the role? Can you do it?
Yeah.
And are we asking the questions to figure that out?
You know what's funny? That should be the number one question. And somehow it's not. Somehow it's not. It's just lost in everything else. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, so I guess we're trying to help companies realize that the status quo of hiring is broken, and the way they're evaluating candidates is forcing job seekers to be manipulative, to manipulate a broken system, right? And so that's where, when you and Chris were talking about, connecting with different people in the organization on LinkedIn, why are we doing that, right? Like, I want to take a step back and say, well, why are you actually doing that? You're doing that to gain favor, to really manipulate the bias of those people to remember you favorably from other candidates. At the end of the day, right? It's nothing to do with the job.
100%. And I want to say, so I'm going to tie two things together. So we also got the comment of, I keep seeing on LinkedIn, personal branding is the new resume. First of all, yes. And what personal brand means is that you're putting information out there on your LinkedIn, if your Facebook is public, on your Facebook, your Instagram, whatever else, that promotes who you are. And then on LinkedIn, specifically who you are as a person. As a professional, who you are as a professional, and your ideals, your talents, those kinds of things. Post things that highlight that. If you want some phenomenal examples, check out Ciminieri Lee. He is, that's Chengeer, and the last name Lee, Lee. He's on LinkedIn. He's phenomenal. Alif Hook, Alif, and the last name Huq. Trevor Houston, both of those spelled exactly how you think they would be. And then of course, anybody who's here on this show, watch what we're posting. That defines personal branding. And to your point, John, and your question, that's a huge way to help overcome that hurdle. Okay. So that when a remote job comes up, you can say, here's my LinkedIn, check that out. They will go through your activity. If they have half a brain, they will go through your activity and check it out. And send them specific posts that you think are relevant. That will help you. You're right that right now it is harder for entry-level people with a lot of things being remote. So look for things that aren't. With the vaccine out, not everything's remote anymore. Okay. We're getting back into a lot more in-office positions. So look for those type of things. If you want remote, you're just going to have to be patient. And the best way to get that is to do what Chris and I talked about earlier and connect on LinkedIn and get that personal connection. And if you can't connect to them on LinkedIn, if you can't find them, or if they're not responding to you, call the HR department and ask for an email. 4 out of 5 times you're going to get it, like I said earlier. So do that and then connect to them that way and send them that image about yourself, a video about yourself, something like that, to show them, to UB's point, how you actually solve their problem, because that's all anybody really cares about anyway, right? It's ultimately not about what you did in the past. It's what can you do for me?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, you're exactly right. The follow-up's key, but it is, how can you solve what they're trying to solve? And that can be through a variety, so I love the LinkedIn profile. Absolutely. Even things like, where have you volunteered before, right? All of those different things that you've done can still all apply from a skills and ability wise to a role. And so how can you
100%.
present that, and I think people forget that, right? Because that's, if it's going back to years of experience, but it shows that while you may look entry level in terms of pure work, if you've done these other things, that should add in, right? Just
and it
because
does.
You didn't get paid for them. It does.
Right. 100%. And if you have references from your volunteer work, things like that, that's huge. So I landed my best actual job ever, not counting, owning my own business. My best actual job was when I worked for the travel partner to the Dallas Cowboys, which was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And, oh my gosh, I just got told that we got cut off from one of our destinations. Sorry, LinkedIn people. Hope you'll get us back soon. Oh no, that's where most of our people are too.
Right.
So, and now I lost my train. Oh yeah. So I got this job with the travel partner to the Dallas Cowboys. And the 2 ways I did that was I stressed what a huge Cowboy fan I am. And not only that, but that my whole family is tied into the Dallas Cowboys, including that my aunt was one of the original cheerleaders. So I tied that emotional aspect. So that's one thing you can do. Whatever the company does, tie yourself into that. This is why this matters to me. This is why this mission matters to me. This is why this work matters to me. This is, maybe you were a customer. Maybe you know someone who was. Maybe they are involved in a charity that speaks to you. And then the other thing I did was I used my volunteer experience with the Red Cross working events and with some other and working events for my dad's college and things like that. And I tied that in and I said, I wasn't paid for these things, but I know what I'm doing. And it worked. I got the job. I loved it. And it was amazing.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think, that is a big thing. There has to be an alignment of passion and values and mindset and trajectory of the company, right? Going back to that top candidate, that doesn't mean that top candidate believes what you believe as a company.
Right.
So you got to figure that out. You got to figure that out in the interview. How do we what are the right questions that we as a company should be asking
100%
to know that, to see that alignment? Because if it's not there, then why bother?
Exactly. Then who cares?
Because there are companies with bad cultures, right? We all know that. But there are people who can work in those places and who actually kind of maybe love that kind of culture. There are. You just have to be able to figure out which ones those candidates are. And so
100%. I completely agree with you. I think, and one of the things, so people right now are saying that they don't like the word company or the term company culture because that can be used to discriminate, which is true. So what I like to say is you want to find someone who or a company, if you're on the candidate side, who aligns with your goals, your integrity, your ethics, and your mission. Those are the things. And if they align there, then they're going to fit in everywhere else. And you don't want to hire a bunch of the same people. This is something that I see companies say all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I want 15 of this guy. No, you don't.
No.
No. You absolutely
You
do not.
don't.
I don't care if they're your top producer.
Exactly.
You absolutely do not want 15 of the same person. It does not help.
No.
Every single study out there that means anything that was done by any reputable source, and trust me, I dig a lot, will tell you that what you want is what's called true diversity. Okay, what that means is that you get different employment backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different social backgrounds, different mentalities, different personalities, genders, orientations, all this fun stuff. And when you mesh all that together, what you get is better success, because you have people that will bring better innovation. That collaboration will bring different innovation. You'll understand your customer base better. And I have clients that prefer to work with other people in my organization. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me. They just happen to like this other person better, and vice versa. And I've had, when I worked for other people, they would have to hand me clients sometimes because they only wanted to work with a woman, or they needed someone who was a little bit quicker, or they needed, whatever it is. Those things matter.
Yes.
Those things matter. And so you want that huge diversity, and you want people with different backgrounds. I have had people on my recruiting teams that had been previously receptionists, that had been security guards, that had been customer service reps, that I think in my whole career and over times of building out recruiting departments and all that, I've only hired 2 actual recruiters.
Isn't that funny?
Everybody else has a completely different background.
Well, that's called the pathways principle, right? There's not one single path to an outcome. There isn't.
Right.
There's multiple ways, and so that applies to people mostly. Is people can come from all kinds of different backgrounds and take different pathways to get to a sales role, or a customer service role, or a finance role, like it.
IT.
And that's an IT 100%. I've had friends who've gone from like a sales role to now they're a software developer.
Yep.
And and that's what's wrong with that. That's what companies need to start. That's where they need to start changing their process and realizing that is how it's going to go, right? They're saying that we're all going to have 5 careers now within our life. It's not about 5 jobs. It's about 5 different careers. And that's the future of work. And so how do companies understand that, accept that, define that within their process, and really find that in the right candidates?
It's about humanity, I think. I think it's about remembering that when you're in hiring, this is a people business. So you need to understand human beings.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to understand them, and you need to understand how to really get to know what a person can do.
Yes.
And what their skill levels are. And the best way you can do that is by not having a scripted interview. That is whenever I see somebody pull out a script, I slap it out of their hands. Like, don't know.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say was scripted. So I think there's structure versus scripted. So I think we should be asking every candidate the same questions, and everybody.
Basically.
Well, the only reason I say that is because we have to be able to evaluate every candidate for a role equally. Like, and that's and so we need to understand what that means, what success means, and then we need to figure out, okay, these are the right questions and these are the right indicators that we need to listen for from every candidate in order to look at them, right?
You definitely need structure. I think that when you had said the word structure, that's better than scripted, because the question may not be worded exactly the same way to everybody, or it may not be, because that's what gets me is when you word it exactly the same way, and and half the time they've already answered this question and you should have just taken the note.
Well, sure. I mean, yes.
Like pay attention. But structured, yes, you're absolutely right. There should be a set structure. For me, for instance, my interviews are structured with, and of course it changes from position to position that I'm interviewing for, but everyone in that same position will get the same structure. But essentially it's the very basic structure is, at the beginning, I run them through the position and the company. I tell them about us. I tell them what's going on with me, my client, all of that. If that sounds good to them, they get the first okay. First, you tell me, do we sound okay? Does that sound like something you want to learn more about? Yes. Yep. So then we move on. And the next thing out of my mouth is, tell me what's important to you in your next role. And do you know what's funny? Most people tell me that they've never been asked that. And that's just
Hmm.
lunacy to me. Like, that's the number one thing people ought to be asking you. And they will tell you
Yeah.
more about themselves and open themselves up to more questions. We have that part of the discussion. Then I ask them some questions about, so I see you have this project. Tell me about that. Tell me about your
Mhm.
contribution. Everything should be open-ended, but it is kind of structured like that. And at the end, of course, we review compensation. We go over all of that kind of thing at the end, kind of what's the next
Sure.
steps. That's very important. Recruiters, tell them next steps,
Yes.
stick to it.
Yes.
Ooh,
Exactly. A timeline.
but don't leave them there and tell them I'll get back to you at some point. No.
Right. Right.
um, but yeah, the structure is very important. And
Yeah.
if you don't have the same structure for everybody, you're right, you will mess up, and you will accidentally, create a bias against a candidate. You will um, irritate a candidate sometimes
Yeah.
because
Well,
they're all goofy.
you'll remember things that about candidates that stuck with you as opposed to what mattered for the role. So,
Right.
if you like snowboarding as a candidate and I love snowboarding, that's what I'm going to remember and make my decision based off of. Not
Yeah.
that you can actually come in and do the job or not. And that's what
Right.
happens without the structure. You lose that data
Mhm.
that's actually going to help you make the right decision. You only
It's so
remember the
true.
story about somebody. Oh, well, they
And
were
and I
nervous and never made eye contact.
Yes,
That kind of stuff.
right. Oh, and I want to hit on that too. Thank you for saying that, because that's one that really gets me. I've seen a lot of people say this person was so nervous in their interview, they're not going to be good at the job. Are you hiring them to interview?
Yeah,
To be
exactly.
interviewed?
To be an
Is that what you're
interviewer,
hiring them to do?
interviewee. Yeah, right,
What
right.
what does that have to do
Ex-
with anything? Just some
yeah,
of the worst interviews I've ever had were some of the best employees or
yep,
team members. I So that just baffles me. That's one that I'm just going,
yeah.
why do people even think that's an indicator?
Right,
Now, now, if you do something real weird in an interview, you know, that okay, that
right.
might be one. Like I've said before on the show, don't bring your mommy to your interview. Mm-mm. Don't don't tell people about your sex
Yeah.
life in your interview. I've
Oh
seen this
boy.
happen. This has actually happened. Yeah,
Right.
don't do that. Don't
Wow.
so don't be weird. Don't be weird. But as long as you're
Yeah.
in a bad way, don't be weird in a bad way.
Yeah. 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 Right.
Yeah,
Right.
be unusual, be unique, but don't be weird.
Gosh,
Um,
so true.
yeah, God, but don't do that stuff. But outside of that, yeah, don't make the decision based on who your BFF is.
Right. Or who you would,
No,
who you think your
nothing to
BF
do with it.
could be. Nothing. Doesn't matter if you can drink a beer with this person. It doesn't
No,
matter unless
no.
that's the role, right?
Yeah,
Unless you're
if this is
actually
your
saying,
personal assistant, fine.
well, yeah, or just yeah. But at the
Otherwise,
end of the day, yeah. Oh, I hear you.
no. I see that all
We got
the
to
time,
change
and I'm
it. We got to change it.
God, yeah. It makes me laugh. The other one is, and this is actually an interesting one. I've been asked, well, what do you do? Let's say it's a sales role, just
Hmm.
hypothetically, because there are other roles to which this would apply. And they're going to go out to a certain market, and that certain market has very strong feelings about, maybe they only want to work with a man, maybe they only want to work with a white person, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever the preference is, a Christian,
Yeah.
whatever. What do you do? And I've been asked that. I said, well, my take on that is, number one, how do you know that's all they'll work with? Because I've had a lot of people tell me that's all they
Hmm.
wanted as clients, and then they get me and they're going, well, I wanted a man. Well, you can have a man or you can have the best. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
decide
Yeah.
real quick, oh, well, I guess I'll take you. So how do you know
Yeah.
that? First of all, but second of all, if that's the
Yeah.
case, I don't know. That is a tough one. What's your take on that before I
Well,
finish?
I mean, I guess the way we look at it is we already know that everyone has bias, and we
Mhm.
also know that nobody was ever really trained to be an interviewer. So I say, without, what you can do is start with training. So let's first of
Mhm.
all train interviewers to be better human beings in the process, and what learn to
Yes.
recognize that that's a bias. But
Mhm.
second is this that's where the structure comes in, because we can
Mhm.
we can sort of mitigate that bias, but we can also analyze the behavior of an interviewer throughout that structure. Because especially if you're scoring candidates, let's
Mhm.
say that person is scoring women lower than male candidates, even though the women are answering better, more
Right.
positively based on the role, that's clearly a bias coming into play.
Yes.
And so it's about that. It's about, let's first of all try to make the interviewers better. Let's just help them be better. But second, let's measure it, and so we can have a defensible reason for saying you need more training or you shouldn't be interviewing.
Yes.
That could be it, right?
Don't interview recruiters and HR people. Do not, I'm going to repeat this, do not read an article about how to interview and then decide that you're the world's greatest interviewer.
Exactly. Nope. Nobody is. And don't go Google the top 20 interview questions for 2020 and use those. Don't.
That's so lame. So it doesn't help anyone. I don't know who's writing these articles, but I don't like them. And because they're giving out bad information.
Yes.
It's so bad. And so guys, look at the role. The way that you do this is you look at the role and you say, this is what we actually need. Not all this, 2 years of this, 3 years of this, blah, blah, blah. This as a whole, this is the problem that we need solved. This is what we need them to know in order to be able to solve it. Absolutely, positively must know. Like if you're a Java developer, obviously you need to know Java,
Right.
So these very basic things. After that, leave it. And don't put ridiculous things on your job description that literally anybody can fit. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And don't say things must be likable. I've actually seen that on there. Team player. Okay.
Define that.
They're going to come in and go, well, first of all, what does that even mean? And second of all, they're just going to come in and go, yeah, sure. I'm a team player.
Sure. Okay, great. You said it, so it must be true.
Right. You said it. That's it. And interviewers and candidates both, quantifiables are what you're looking for.
Exactly.
Let's say it's a sales rep, because that's just kind of the easiest one to throw out there. I increased sales by X percentage, or I got this many dollars in sales. If you're a manager, I increased productivity by this, I reduced waste by this.
Yeah.
Quantifiables, folks. Quantifiables. And references are kind of iffy subject too. So be careful when you're checking references.
Right, exactly. Like put a structure around that. Again, just structure the process.
Structure. I think there's a theme. I think there's a theme here.
It should be, yes.
Structure.
Yes.
Maybe I'll rebrand this episode, the structure episode.
Right. Let's just start there. That's a great place to start.
It is. And thank you so much, Yubi, for joining me today.
It
has been an absolute blast. And tell everybody real quick how to find you.
Interviewia.com is really, just start there. You can get to our podcast. We had Catherine on, called The Higher Future. And just come check us out there.
And LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn as well. UBCIMINIERI. That's my name, Yubi Ciminieri. So please, I would love to talk to you.
Yes, and
exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Please connect. Everybody, both of my guests today are very big on communicating and helping others. They will respond to you. So definitely reach out and check them out. Thank you, Yubi.
Bye, everybody.